Hi everyone, my name is Lior Neudorfer, VP Products for Guardicore, and I'm here today to talk to you about how to rethink your firewall strategy in light of rising ransomware attacks. And here's what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to talk a bit about the threat landscape, what you can expect when we're talking about ransomware threats. Then we'll talk about firewalls today and why we think they're obsolete and not relevant when dealing with modern attacks. Then discuss the evolution of software-based segmentation a bit, talk about the Guardicore architecture and the advantages of software-based segmentation. And finally, we're going to talk about some common use cases for software-based segmentation and how to actually mitigate ransomware attacks. So let's start and talk about the security landscape. When we're talking about ransomware, today ransomware is predicted to attack a business every 11 seconds. That's insane. And when you look at additional attack like the SolarWinds attack, you actually see that there's a rising number of very sophisticated global attacks, sometimes state-sponsored. And together with the fact that remote work is exploding, the end result is you're exposed, you're vulnerable, and these attacks have a rising chance of actually succeeding, whether it's through endpoints or through servers. So you have all these attacks, and then when we actually talk to our customers and talk to your peers, they feel like their legacy firewalls today are simply not effective enough against ransomware attacks specifically, and completely not effective when you need to restrict lateral movement. And why is that? Let's talk about legacy firewalls. So first of all, legacy firewalls are too slow and complex. Rule sets tend to grow over time, and it's not easy to understand how the rules work, how effective they are. You don't have good visibility to what's going on. And these firewalls are entangled with network infrastructure, which adds even more complexity and time draft, including the need for downtime in some cases. In addition, organizations are delivering applications today in more places and in more ways than ever. So if we used to talk just about on-prem workloads, today organizations are using cloud, they're using containers, and enforcing traffic in all these modern infrastructure through centralized network choke points makes even less sense. And finally, legacy firewalls are simply expensive. Organizations find themselves on an endless hardware upgrade cycle as demands increase, as traffic increases, and new security requirements are introduced, which means a constant growth in cost of firewalls. We think there's a better alternative. We don't think, while legacy firewalls will not disappear overnight, we think there is a better way. And I'm going to walk you through a way of addressing a security policy needs that is proven in real-world scenarios to be faster. For example, take 45 business-critical applications and segment them in 6 weeks versus 1.5 years in the legacy firewall alternative, and without downtime. An alternative which introduces lower risk, which means it reduces the attack surface by up to 99%, and an alternative which has lower cost. And we're talking about 85 total cost of ownership savings over legacy firewalls. So this is the alternative, and it's time to rethink how we segment. While the old way with legacy firewall would have been create physical choke points by using physical firewall appliances, right? You create network choke points by placing appliances and forcing traffic to go through it, tying it to specific infrastructure, and on the cloud creating the same thing, but essentially with virtual firewall appliances. Instead of all this, imagine you could replace this with a simpler, more dynamic approach, which uses a distributed, software-based approach on all operating systems, whether it's on the data center or on the cloud, whether we're talking about segmenting the cutting edge container environment or legacy machines such as Windows XP, AS400, Solaris, or any other old Unix-based machine. An alternative which has one set of security policies which work everywhere. And it's easy to visualize, easy to change, and easy to build a policy which isn't tied to specific infrastructure or tied to specific choke points, but instead focused on workloads and security objectives. This is what we're talking about today. This is software-based segmentation. So what is it good for? As you shift to software-based segmentation, you get multiple advantages. First of all, from the operations perspective, it's fast and non-disruptive to deploy. You just put an agent. No more establishing network choke points, rearranging wires, moving VLANs, all of that gone. It's much simpler to create policies. You have an AI-based policy creation engine which helps you build policies according to what our agent has learned about the traffic. It's fast and it's intuitive to update your policies, to update your capabilities, and it scales beautifully. Instead of needing to increase the size of the appliances that do the network choke point, you just scale with your environment. Every workload gets an agent, grow the environment as much as you want. On the security side, the advantages of software-based segmentation are, first of all, you get one single policy, one consistent policy across platforms and environments. You can protect every segment between every workload. So every two workloads you can build a policy on, regardless of the infrastructure, regardless of the VLAN they're on. It's based on context instead of network choke points. So you're basing your policy according to workload properties. Who is the server? What business application is it on? What is its role? These are things that you want to base your policy on, not the server's location in your environment infrastructure. That's less interesting. And finally, software-based segmentation also extends your security from servers to users and endpoints. And again, all of these with one single consistent policy. So let's talk about the attack surface. Reducing that attack surface was never easy, but it's only getting harder. Why? Now, segmentation is really one of the oldest concepts in security. Everybody understands what it means, and everybody, or almost everybody, agrees that a better segmentation means a reduced attack surface. But still, many of the companies we talk to have very little segmentation implemented in their network. And the reason is that firewalls are simply painful and restrictive. They're not good enough. They don't provide you with visibility. They're tied to infrastructure. When applications change, it means that you have to do some drastic changes to the firewall, sometimes even involving downtime. They're slow to implement because they're hardware-based. And you have to involve many, many teams when you want to build out a new segment, create a new VLAN, shift machines between VLANs. This is not easy, agile, fast operations. And you can see on the tweet below, and network segmentation projects are where CISOs go to die. You know how it starts, you never know how it actually ends and how much time it will take. It simply becomes too hard with legacy firewalls. So this means that when you go to big companies, you actually see that many enterprise networks are simply too flat because it was so hard to build the segmentation. But segmentation is actually more important than ever. We talked about the threat landscape. Segmentation will help you when you have a hybrid infrastructure to block new attack vectors. It will help you block lateral movement, which can take your business down. If you do proper segmentation on east-west traffic, that's the right thing to do because most of the traffic is there. And finally, segmentation is simply important because regulations And industry standards and frameworks such as Zero Trust simply dictate that. They all agree on the fact that segmentation is a very basic building block. So as you make the transition from legacy firewalls to software-based segmentation, your success will actually rely on three key factors. The first one is you want visibility and certainty across all environments. Before you even start to segment, you want to know what's going on, understand dependencies between applications, regardless of where they are. Production applications can be on on-prem, public cloud, containers, legacy, bare metal. You want to visualize all of it before you even start. The second key capability that you want to base your success on is be a true distributed and infrastructure independent solution. So your enforcement should work everywhere. If you have legacy assets, specific operating systems, you want to make sure that the segmentation solution you choose actually works there. Windows XP, Windows 2003, AS400, whatever you have, you want to make sure that your software-based segmentation solution applies to these operating systems. And finally, you want to make sure that you can build adaptive policies based on the business context. So instead of the old way of basing policies on IP addresses and ports with a lot of manual effort and downtime, you want to shift to policies based on abstractions. You talk about applications, right? Or business functions. That's what you want to protect. So that's what you should build your policy according to. And you want to make sure, of course, that the solution is automation ready. Just a small example from one of our customers, a regional bank in the United States. They had a project to protect their 10 critical applications, their digital crown jewels. And this is something that every organization have. You can take your entire infrastructure, prioritize risk to it, and clearly identify the key business applications that need to be protected first, need to be segmented first. So this customer chose 10 critical applications, and the project was to build a ring fence around these applications, essentially segmenting them from the network and explicitly saying what's allowed and what's not allowed to and from these applications. The alternative to Guardicore was do it with legacy segmentation, but when they figured out how much time it would take them, more than a year and a half, because there was no visibility, because there was very complex infrastructure, they chose Guardicore, which meant that one architect was able to segment and ring fence 10 critical applications within 2 months because they gained granular east-west traffic visibility, which allowed them to map everything and then easily build an automated segmentation process for these 10 critical crown jewels. All right, let's talk a bit about ransomware. How does it work? So when we look at how ransomware works, we can identify 6 unique phases. The first one is getting the initial foothold by some kind of phishing or spear phishing attack or some vulnerable service, getting the first point of insertion in your organization. The next step, which is maybe the most critical for ransomware, is doing the lateral movement. Ransomware doesn't stay put. It moves around, it infects more and more servers and endpoints, and it wants to spread as far as it can. Once the ransomware has done that, it's time to exfiltrate data, find and steal valuable data. Sometimes this happens, sometimes not, but it's definitely possible when you have the ransomware spread all across your organization. Probably some sensitive data is exposed. The next phase, of course, is actually encrypting the data with a unique key in order to prevent the organization from accessing these files, from accessing this data, and do it properly in order to prevent any kind of attempts to decrypt this without the proper key. Then finally, of course, leaving some kind of ransom note with instructions how to pay and who to pay to, probably with some cryptocurrency. This will probably be some text file or wallpaper on one or more machines. And finally, when the organization and if the organization decides to pay, time for the profit. So how do you defend against this? So segmentation is actually a key capability when you're preparing your plan to deal and mitigate ransomware attack and even for recovery. And if we use a Gartner framework for ransomware defense, we see that there are basically 5 phases here. And being able to apply fast segmentation rules as provided by Guardicore is critical for each one of them. Let's talk about this. So step 1, preparation. In order to prepare for a ransomware attack, you want to map all your assets, identify the critical applications or the assets which contain the critical data, and map your security gaps. Understand where would ransomware appear, what would be the easiest path for a ransomware attack to do the lateral movement and spread around. That's phase 1. You can also prepare some rules in advance and playbooks in advance. For example, a rule which says block all SMB traffic, or disconnect a specific site, or quarantine a specific machine or subnets. These are all things you can prepare in advance. The second stage is starting to prevent the ransomware attack. How do you do that? You start to secure the common ingress points, and you block the common propagation paths, and you segment your critical assets. You build the walls necessary in order to prepare for the lateral movement attempt of the ransomware. So if you know there's a critical application, or if you know there's a critical file server, you can start building a segmentation policy and enforcing segmentation policy around it in order to limit any kinds of attempts to laterally move into it and encrypt the data on it. When an incident happens, if a ransomware incident actually happens, Guardicore can help to quickly detect this attack before it actually turns into a bigger disaster. So Guardicore actually has multiple detection techniques, such as reputation analysis or detecting data exfiltration. These are all things you can turn on and get signals as soon as an attack starts. Maybe a lateral movement was already detected, maybe an access to some command and control server was detected. So Guardicore, with Guardicore Insight and Guardicore Reveal, can actually assist your organization in detecting this in a very early stage. And the earlier you detect it, the sooner you can activate these rules you prepared on the first step. When the incident is detected, Guardicore can actually help you remediate the problem. Quickly quarantine affected networks, so prevent the lateral movement of ransomware to specific environments if they haven't been infected yet. Disconnect clean environments, as I said. Block access to the command and control server. These are all things that, even if the attack started, will help control the spread of this attack and minimize the damage done. And finally, even in the recovery stage, when you recover from such an attack, you want to make sure that nothing gets reinfected. And you want to make sure that you have 100% visibility to the servers and endpoints that you build again, to make sure that they're clean and you can safely turn them on again. So let's summarize this. In order to reduce the propagation paths, in order to prevent and prepare for these attacks, you want to segment your zones, your applications. You want to control protocols which are commonly used for lateral movements, and you want to limit your users so they can only access required applications and required services. And if you do that, attackers will have a harder time moving across the network, infection rates should drop, and the detection rates should rise. If something happens, if you want to assess the infection scope, you can quickly identify and create a map of all assets which were infected, expand your investigation according to this map, create more maps based on new IOCs that you find, and just continue iteratively until the full infection scope is determined. And you can see an example here for such a map where you can, when we used Guardicore Reveal to map all assets which were part of a ransomware attack. And finally, when we're talking about recovery, restore the backups, bring up systems online, but then do the same thing. Go to the map, make sure that nothing remains from the infection, and continue isolating. If there is some infected machines, continue using segmentation to isolate them in order to accelerate this recovery process. So let's go back to Guardicore. How do we help you do exactly this? How do we help you prepare this policy for ransomware? Guardicore provides you a single user interface managing your entire policy. So if we are talking about prevention or containment or recovery policies, these are all part of the same tool with the same set of capabilities, which applies to all operating systems, which applies to all environments. That's critical if you want to truly protect your entire environment against ransomware. Guardicore provides you with full visibility into all connections, so you can clearly understand who accessed what, when, on which environment, and what was being done there. And you can make better informed decisions when building these policies and when dealing or recovering from a ransomware attack. Guardicore also supplies you with a dynamic policy engine for accommodating network changes. So the network and the data center are not static. Servers keep coming up and down and maybe change their location. Guardicore adapts to all that dynamically, leaving you with less work and less maintenance to be done. And eventually, this is what it's all about. Guardicore helps you reduce the time and complexity of managing multiple tools which you need in order to deal with ransomware. Identify it, prevent it, protect against it, and recover from it. I want to tell you a bit about the ransomware reduction service that Guardicore offers. We offer a service package which helps you to do everything from mapping and visualizing your critical assets, restricting access to those services in order to protect, prevent against ransomware, and then do the same with lateral movements, protect your core applications, and finally giving you the tools needed to mitigate the attacks if they actually happen. This is a service package that Guardicore offers, and our professional services team would be happy to tell you more about it. So if we summarize this, just a second, please edit this out. Pause the recording. Okay, continuing from this point. So we talked about how software-based segmentation assists with ransomware, but it's not, of course, the only use case for software-based segmentation. If you look at this, there are many use cases from east-west traffic visibility and control and application ring fencing, all the way to environment segmentation, device isolation, compliance, and container visibility and segmentation. There are really many use cases and problems and challenges that can be solved with software-based segmentation. I want to give you two quotes, to leave you with two quotes. One from one of our customers, a Fortune 50 bank, which we were able to accomplish something that, according to their words, wasn't seen and hasn't been done in the industry. And this was around an environment segmentation of tens of thousands of servers, which using legacy firewalls would have taken years and years of effort. And with Guardicore, they were able to achieve this within months. And one more example, a global investment firm which had complete lack of visibility to their environment. They used Guardicore to get visibility, dependency mapping of that of their environment, and prepare for a cloud migration process. That was the key point here, to gain visibility in order to do proper cloud migration securely. Building policies before, which will move together with the shift to the cloud with the application itself. That's it. We're Guardicore, data center and cloud security company. As I hope you understood from this presentation, we provide the simplest, most intuitive way to protect your organization's critical assets with segmentation. We have more than 300,000 servers around the world protected with Guardicore, more than 30,000 endpoints, and more than 1 billion daily inspected processes, all done in order to help our customers, to help our users, to better protect their critical data and critical applications. And you can see an example for the customers which we protect today from all sorts of verticals, from banks and other financial services, telco, legal, insurance, healthcare. And these organizations trust Guardicore with their most critical assets. I encourage you to take the first step in your segmentation journey by actually downloading the Infection Monkey. The Infection Monkey is a free open source tool which can help you understand how resilient your network is, to prioritize changes after it scans the network and spreads around, to prioritize what actually needs to be done to protect your environment, and to test the impact of tools on configurations on your environment security posture. So please go ahead, download this tool, get a nice report on your environment. It's a great, free, easy first step to take in this journey. Thank you. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me personally on email or visit our website. Thank you and good luck.